We live in a time that is very exciting for fighting games. Every major studio and franchise across the board all have releases on the way, and the support for these games has never been better, with constant updates and DLC to keep new players and returning players interested for possibly years at a time. But a lot of people who are just now coming in feel like they need to compete with people who have up to 30 years of knowledge on the genre right away, which can just seem like an impossible hill to climb. But I'm able to tell you from experience that it is not as intimidating as it seems. Throughout this series of videos, I plan to make it possible for anyone who's either just now buying their first fighting game, or anyone who has a history playing fighting games without really any knowledge of how to play them at all. They can become good enough to compete with others, and someday maybe even achieve dreams of a high rank, or even winning a tournament. A lot of fighting game YouTube is pretty disjointed from the actual experience of just picking up a fighting game in the modern day. Here's a few clips from major YouTubers in their how to learn fighting game videos.
If you're looking forward to a specific game, whether it's Killer Instinct Season 2, Guilty Gear Xrd, Mortal Kombat X in the future, Super Smash Bros. On the Wii U, whatever it might be, if you really care, just take some time out of your schedule and dedicate it to playing the game for the first couple of weeks is out. Don't actually play other games in the meantime, just focus on that fighting game.
I think the first step, when you want to learn how to play a character, you got to know their moves, obviously. So I'm going to pull up the move list here. And then also mess with movement. That's another thing that a lot of people neglect.
Every level has different challenges, but one common struggle for all levels is maintaining that desire to keep getting better. In the gospel of the most successful Street Fighter player in the world, Daigo Umehara says that tournaments are a playground for people who practice for growth.
This is actually all good advice, but it's really aimed at intermediate players, people who are already playing with friends or already playing online, and they understand their games and what they're doing, they just want to get better. And this advice is good for them, but it's not really good for someone who has just began taking fighting games seriously whatsoever. I'm sure a lot of you have the experience of trying to jump into an online match and you just get comboed into oblivion even from the players at the lowest rank without any second to breathe. You maybe went into training mode and tried a combo out, or tried even just a special move, and the endless string of buttons just seems to make no sense to you. You're not unable to do it and you just don't get anywhere. So where do you actually start? Well, I would suggest that the actual most fundamental and most necessary skill in fighting games is learning how to block. All fighting games have their own way to block, whether this is Mortal Kombat's block button, or if it's Street Fighter you hold back and away from the attack, or in Tekken you can even leave your controller completely still and you'll just block normal attacks. This isn't what I'm here to tell you about. I'm telling you that the difference between dying in 15 seconds and the difference between dying in 30 is actually a huge leap in skill, and it's one that a beginner will not only appreciate, but one that will improve a lot in a very short amount of time, and you'll see results right away just trying to focus on improving your blocking. The reasons that those losses where we just get comboed into oblivion and die in 15 seconds feel so overwhelmingly bad is because you don't really get the chance to interact in games like this. Your opponent won't ever really be trying to give you a second to breathe, and you can't really react to a single thing they do when you've just started the game. Maybe you tried to block, or maybe you tried to punch them, but ultimately that didn't matter in those matches, and even if they didn't manage to get a perfect on you, at your current skill level there's no way you can win against someone like that. So it's time to train your blocking, the very first thing you should learn before anything else. As I said in the previous section, all fighting games have a way to block. This skill will transfer over to any fighting game you play. Blocking and reacting to your opponent's attacks are basically one and the same, and it's a massive leap in skill and comprehension of fighting games when you start to get this kind of skill in your head. Here's a clip from early into the first round of the Dragon Ball FighterZ EVO 2019 Grand Finals. Goichi manages to block Sonic Fox's endless assault for a staggering 11 seconds in a row without managing to get hit. How exactly is it he's doing this though? A lot of people look at this and think it's probably like The Matrix or whatever. Neo manages to just block every punch and just shove it away, and it looks very, very impressive. But Goichi isn't actually reacting to each and everything Sonic Fox is doing. So how does he do it? There are generally three kinds of attacks in all fighting games. Highs, which you can only block while standing, lows, which you can only block while crouching, and mids, which can be blocked in either position. Some general rules for these positions and attacks that can hit you in are that every attack that hits you from a jumping opponent will hit high, and lows can generally only come from the opponents on the floor. There are rare examples or exceptions to these rules, but that just gets us into our first point in learning how to block, which is exceptions. Blocking in a fighting game really isn't like it is in real life. While impressive top level players seem to react to every single attack that comes their way, no matter how chaotic anything going on is, they're not actually reacting to each and every attack that comes their way. Blocking isn't really about looking at everything your opponent's doing, it's about looking at what they could do. If you think about blocking as exceptions, if you're already blocking low, you don't need to care if your opponent does another low or even a mid attack, you'll just block all of those. So what you need to look out for is when they adapt to you blocking low and they try to hit you high. Most moves that hit high from a standing position or from a jumping attack are referred to as overheads, and how common these moves are and how commonly players use them can largely depend on the game. So let's look at an example from a game where they're not exactly common. Ryu is probably the most well-known fighting game character on the planet, and he's the main character of the Street Fighter franchise. Main characters tend to be very commonly picked in fighting games, and if I play Ryu and I set my training partner to just block in a crouching position, let's see how many moves Ryu has that can hit the opponent. As you can see, even from this position, the vast majority of everything Ryu can do is blocked. You don't have to react to most of Ryu's possible options, and in fact, all of these options can be turned into just the one. All of these require Ryu to jump, and they only need me to react to the act of jumping itself, and not to which particular move he uses. As you can see, this essentially narrows down the number of options to just 2. You only need to look out for these 2 moves and change your blocking position to high whenever any of those happen. A lot of games have an easy way for me to practice this. Some games have easier methods than others, and everyone learns differently. I recommend going at your own pace with training your blocking skills, but here's a few ways that you can learn. Luckily, the 2 most efficient ways to train your ability to block are polar opposites in terms of difficulty. The 2 easiest options are, in order, Training Mode AI and Training Against a Friend. Training Against a Friend is pretty self-explanatory, and honestly the better that they are, the faster you'll learn. The environment, the atmosphere, and how your friend can adapt to how well you're responding to their strategy means that you can practice against new things on the fly, you can ask to repeat certain situations that you're struggling with. It's an excellent learning tool to play against a friend, and it's a great learning environment. But for the best of both worlds, last year's Guilty Gear Strive even has an online training mode. So let's just talk about how training mode is good for this kind of training. All fighting games have AI settings in training mode. The easiest thing for a complete beginner to try against would be this, and most even have numbered difficulty selections, though I recommend setting it to around 4 or 5. Too high and you get situations like this. Training mode unfortunately is a little unintuitive to beginners. I'll save its deeper features for a later video, but for a beginner, training mode AI just set to a number of something that suits you will help a great deal. You can be against a character you struggle with, a character that's simple but is complex, or even just whoever your friend plays. And learning how to block their general basic offense will teach you a great deal about defending, and it'll buy you precious extra seconds. If the opponent attempts to go for a grab, or if the opponent attempts to super move you, you can even just reset at any time and just set things back to neutral so you don't have to sit and wait for animations to finish to just continue your training. I did just bring up something that contradicts one of my earlier claims though. You see, when I said Ryu only has 2 ways to break through a crouching block, I lied. There's another third option that breaks through, and it is throws. Throws are a major reason that I don't really recommend playing against someone who you can't actively communicate with, like playing against a stranger online. See, grabbing and grab blocking, it depends on the game how you actually do it, but it's a little bit more of an advanced technique, and it isn't something you're going to improve at right away. I wouldn't focus on training it as much as I would just focus on blocking and understanding your opponent's offense. While we will get into grabs and how to break them at a later time, next video is going to actually be about beginning your offense, understanding how to plan an offense that's safe, that isn't going to get you killed, and that will actually work against another opponent. So if you want to see more, leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and if you have any feedback or if you have any other topics or questions that you're interested in, just comment down below. It would really mean a lot to me and it would really help me get this channel off the ground. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next video.